Hey everyone, my name is Rio, and welcome to the 10th episode of the Indie Game Devlog, where I go over the development of my game Orb. Now, as it's the 10th episode, I want to talk about some more substantial things regarding the game. So, let's get into it. One of the first things I want to talk about is my main goal I'm focusing on right now, and that is 3D models. Right now I'm spending most of my time making the 3D models for the game as well as texturing them. And interestingly enough, my approach to making 3D models has changed quite a bit since I've been going to university. I've learned a lot about game design and game development so far. And it definitely caused my technique of making models to change a bit, because looking back, I definitely made a few mistakes, mainly in optimizing my poly count. Now, for those who don't know, a 3D model is made out of a bunch of squares, or triangles basically, called polygons. And the amount you have on those is very important. You want to make sure not to have too many, as it could slow down your game and demand more power from your graphics card. So you want to make sure that your poly count is well optimized, and to make sure that you're not using any in places where you really shouldn't. So I've been definitely paying more attention to try and make things a bit more low poly. At the end of the day, a texture on a model is what really makes it. You can have a bad 3D model with a good texture and it'll still look fine, but if you have a really great model with a garbage texture, then it ends up not looking as good. On top of this, I've also been trying to go for a bit more of a realistic look. I've been making sure to make everything based off of measurements so that everything feels very proportionate. Because in the demo, I think I eyeballed most of the sizes and scales for things. So this time I'm putting in a bit more effort and making sure that everything is the right height. Now, when it comes down to textures, I'd like to think that I've also improved a lot. I've changed my approach as well to that. The best example of this is the button of the demo. I really hate the old design of this. The way I made a lot of the textures in the demo was by basically just painting the colors on top of their ambient occlusion, which wasn't a good way of texturing. It ended up looking very artificial and plastic-like. Now, I'd like to think that my texturing has improved. A lot of people tend to use programs like Substance Painter, which is true, can be very efficient. I'm going for more of a hand-built style, so I actually composite all of my textures in Photoshop out of real-life pictures and textures of existing things. The reason I do this is so that I can focus 100% on colors and getting all that right before I focus on things like normal and roughness. It's a bit of a slower process, but it does pay off in the end. Now, throughout the development of Orb so far, the style of the game has changed quite a bit, although I'd like to think that I'm now in a position where the style is pretty good and something I can stick with consistently. The biggest change is that the game's style shifted from a very heavily sci-fi inspired look to something a little more realistic and industrial. It's definitely still science fiction, although more mechanical. And the best example I can show of this is probably the new platform designs for the game. In the demo, the platforms looked like this. Very sleek, floaty, with a bunch of glowing parts to them. Very science fiction-y with no real logic behind it. Now, in the full version of the game, I'm opting for something a bit more mechanical, having the platform suspended and traveling on a railway-like system, either attached to the ceiling or to the walls. Functionally, they're still the same, but design-wise, I decided to change them. The main reason I chose this is because I felt like it would make the world feel more realistic, and in turn allow the player to immerse themselves more in the universe of the game. Of course, there's a fine balance between making things look realistic and making things look cool and science fiction-like. Of course, things like the power cells still have their glowing aesthetic to them, although it's been dimmed down a bit. Now, I want to go back real quick on the platform. I want to go back real quick on the platform mechanic. The style has changed, and functionally, it is still the same. However, the way that I do it now is a bit different. In the demo, and I don't know why I did it this way, it definitely wasn't the most efficient way. In the demo, all of the platforms that you see and interact with in those levels are moving based on Matinee, which is basically their cutscene editor, where you can make animations and change camera angles, similar to what you do in an animation program. Now, the reason why this was so inefficient was because I'd have to animate the route of each platform separately. And if I wanted to make any changes, I would have to make those changes like across all 4 dimensions, and I couldn't just copy paste it. I had to animate all of those in each dimension separately. Now, the new system that I made is 1,000 times better and more efficient, which speeds up the progress so quickly. Instead of using Matinee, I use a blueprint system where the platform follows along a spline, which I can control. At first I was kind of stuck with this because I couldn't really change the speed of it. However, eventually I got something working, and now all I have to do is just drag out and make a visual path for them, select their speed, and the rest of the work is done automatically through the blueprint system. So this will definitely mean I could do a bunch more levels with more intricate platform movements and maybe some more intense platform segments as well. So I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to experiment with that a bunch. Now, I said that I wanted to talk about some more substantial stuff regarding the game, and I'm working on a lot of the final models for the game. However, this doesn't mean that everything's finished. There's still a lot to do regarding later levels of the game, story writing, and even AI. But at the moment, I'm putting my focus towards making a vertical slice of the game. Now, what is a vertical slice? A lot of the times in the game industry, companies will make what is called a vertical slice for a game, which is essentially a fully playable and polished part of the game, whether it be one level or an entire chapter. Usually, they take place somewhere in the middle of the game and are often used for marketing purposes or testing. Right now, I'm not too sure whether I'm going to make a vertical slice somewhere in the middle of the game or just release the first chapter like the demo. Currently, I'm leaning more towards the latter, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. And that is one of the main reasons why I'm making all those finalized models for the game. So yeah, I think that's about it. Now, before I end the video, I have one more big announcement.